It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Egypt. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode covers Egypt's players. Just a note on where we're at in our mediacast. We are publishing previews of the groups and teams for the 2025 African Cup at the same time as this series on the players. Last summer, we previewed the groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. And we also did a media cast introducing ourselves there. After this African Cup, we will tackle the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026. So stay tuned for our publishing of those. That's going to start in the springtime of 2026. We're doing this media cast in two parts on the players. Part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors, and we categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. We'll go into more details on the players we think likely to reach the final squad, and less, perhaps just even the names of the players less likely to get there. Part 2 will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. That'll probably be in early to mid-December. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create today and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode has 3 sections. Section 1, where we look at some general information on the team. Section 2, where we cover the main candidates in each position. And Section 3, where we basically review and summarize, and especially focusing on injuries to keep an eye on there. All right, let's begin jumping into Section 1. And we begin with a few comments on the squad. Actually, until now, we've been doing a section on big names who are off the squad. We've decided to reorganize a little bit. So we're going to cover them as we go in Section 2 and then review them in Section 3. Let's look at club affiliations for Egypt. So Egypt has a very healthy league, and most of the players are with teams in that domestic league. And the biggest of those are Al Ahly, Zamalek, and Pyramids. So that accounts probably, I'd say, for more than 80% of the players, but a few of them do play outside if they're tempted by strong European clubs or by wealthy Middle Eastern clubs. So we do have Mohamed Salah playing in England for Liverpool and Omar Marmoush at Manchester City. We have a couple of players with French clubs there, Nantes and Nice. And then we have three of their top players with clubs in the Middle East, in the UAE, 2 of them, and 1 of them in Qatar. And of course, we'll cover that as we go through the players. But that's an overview of their club affiliations. The main point there, most of them playing in Egypt. Let's take a look at their recent games. We're going to begin our narratives from the last African Cup. That was in 2024, but it's actually called the 2023 African Cup. I may refer to it by either of those names. But in terms of participation, we're looking at the games from that point or after that point. So we have 2 friendlies in March of 2024. There, and then in 2026, in June of 2024, we have World Cup qualifying for the 2026 World Cup there. So 2 games in June, and then We took a break from World Cup qualifying in the fall of 2024 to do all the African Cup qualifying for this tournament. So that is 6 games from September to November 2024. Egypt was involved in a couple of other things. The African National Championship, that's a tournament basically for local players, but some of the top players don't attend that. In fact, most of them don't, so we kind of leave that one off the list. We jump then to March of 2025, where they resume World Cup qualifying, so 2 games there. Now, most teams in June of 2025 had friendlies. They played friendlies. Egypt didn't, but a very weird situation, which I'll describe at the end of part 2, is that they played 2 friendlies in September of 2025. However, this was at the same time that they had World Cup qualifying games. So, however, they did use some of their top players in those friendlies. It's very bizarre, and again, I'll explain it at the end of part 2. Anyway, the main business in the fall of 2025 was completing World Cup qualifying. So we have 4 games in September and October there of 2025. So that gives us 16 games that we're using to judge players' participation over the period, and they had the same manager throughout that period. Let's take a look at formations, not in detail for those things, rather we'll give a summary, and we'll say that half of those 16 games were a 4-2-3-1 formation. 4-2-3-1 formation, and then a quarter of them were a 4-3-3 formation. In fact, that was the formation they preferred in the African Cup in January 2024 there, but using it a bit less going forward. And then we have 3 different formations beyond that, which we won't get into. But with a bit of analysis of this, we can tell you that they used a 2-man central defense 75% of the time. So we're looking at 2 central defenders there. And then they used a 3-man central defense in 25% of the games. And then another pattern we can tell you is that they used a single forward most of the time. So in 94% of the games, or all but one of them, and just one time did they use a 2-man forward line. So that'll kind of come into play when we get into section 2. Our last order of business here is their upcoming games, and they actually started, we're doing this on November 17th is the date today. So they actually played one of their November games. They lost 2-0 to Uzbekistan. That game and all their friendlies in this period are played in the UAE. And then we have actually a similar situation to September, where we have them playing 2 games at the same time. So they have 2 friendlies on November 17th, both of them in the UAE. One of them is against Algeria, and one of them is against Cape Verde. And again, I'll provide a bit of clarity on that at the end of part 2, what's going on when the team has 2 games at the same time, because that was the case in September. Anyway, we'll glean from that what we can. They also have the Arab Cup in December of 2025. So they start with the group stage games there. 3 games, December 2nd, 6th and 9th. So we're going to, in part 2, when we do part 2, we're going to use those games to kind of see what the lineups are and whether they can help us determine who the starters will be in the cup. So lots of games upcoming over the next little while for Egypt. And let's move on to section 2, where we look at the candidates. So here we're basically going to begin with a summary of the position or the situation. And then emerging from that summary, we'll give some information on the key individuals involved. So beginning with the manager, this is the managerial situation over the last little while. Rui Victoria was the manager. He was the manager from July of 2022. That was after they failed to reach the 2022 World Cup. They lost in a penalty shootout there with Senegal. And actually, after they had started the 2023 African Cup qualifying campaign. So he led them through that, through the rest of the African Cup qualifying for the last tournament. And he won all of the remaining games there. And in the Cup, they tied all group stage games, and then they were knocked out on penalties in the round of 16. So that was a pretty disappointing result, and Rui Victoria was given the sack a week after the tournament. For 2 days, a kind of an ex-player who's become a manager, Mohamed Youssef, came in as a caretaker manager. Maybe they thought they would need him for longer. It ended up only being 2 days there. So Mohamed Youssef, a caretaker manager for a couple of days before they hired the current manager, Hossam Hassan. And he is also an ex-player, and that's the situation there. So Hossam Hassan hired then in February of 2024, and he took them through the qualification for this Cup and for the 2026 World Cup, and was very successful, winning 13 of their 16 games over the 2 campaigns and tying the other 3. So Hossam Hassan, the manager, and we will introduce him to give you some information. So he's kind of a famous player for Egypt, played with the national team for 21 years from 1985 to 2006, and he amassed 161 caps and 63 goals. Even by today's standards, that's a lot of caps, but by the standards of those days, that is a absolute massive career. So Hossam Hassan is 59 years old now, and I won't go through his playing career except to say that he participated in the 1986, 1998, and 2000 African Cups all the way to 2006. Just 1 World Cup appearance there for him in 1990. So a huge career as a player, Hossam Hassan, but we're more interested in him as a manager. So as we saw, he became manager of the national team in February of 2024. Prior to that, he was mostly managing clubs in Egypt. He's managed Al Masry in Egypt 5 times, and various other clubs as well, including some of their biggest ones. He was with Zamalek a couple of times, and also managed the Jordan national team. So Jordan, their national team, that was in 2013 and 14. So very experienced manager, looking very successful so far. So Hossam Hassan guiding them through this tournament. Next, let's move on to goalkeepers, and we'll begin with a summary of the position here. So Mohamed El Shanawi started the first 3 games of the African Cup in January of 2024 there, but he was injured for game 4. So Mohamed Abu Gabal took over for the last game. And that actually included the penalty shootout with Congo DR. So baptism of fire. Well, he's an experienced player, but as far as it goes, he really jumped into the middle of things there. However, that penalty shootout would be Mohamed Abu Gabal's last appearance. Mohamed El Shanawi returned in June of 2024 and played all games over the period except for 2. 1 game he missed was the last game in November of 2024, and Ufa Chaubert stepped in. And the other was the last game in October of October of 2025, and Mohamed Sobi deputized there. So those two, Ufa Shobair and Mohamed Sobi, do seem to be the backups, even if Mohamed Sobi was off the squad from after the 2024 African Cup until the fall of 2025. He returned there in the fall of 2025, as we'll see when we introduce the candidates. Mohamed El Shanawi then seems to be the starter, but it is a bit concerning that he was not selected for the last game in October. We're only going up to October, even though the November game has been played. We'll cover that in part 2. So out of that, we have a definite candidate. You might think that's Mohamed El Shanawi, but it's not. The definite candidate is Ufa Shobair. And if you're looking at the YouTube graphic, you'll see his name is in light gray. That indicates he hasn't been through a tournament. So he hasn't. He's new to the team since 2024 and only has 2 caps. He's 25 years old and plays for Al Ahly in Egypt. So he got his first appearance on the bench in June of 2024, and he started one of their remaining games, as we saw in the summary of the position there. He was subbed in for one. However, he was on the bench for all 12 games. So in terms of his likelihood of being selected for the squad, we put it as a definite because he was there consistently. Mohamed El Shanawi is just at the likely level, and I'll tell you that that's mostly because we're concerned that he missed or he wasn't called up for the last game in October, so we wonder if they're considering some changes there. Anyway, let's introduce Mohamed El Shanawi. Actually, I like to introduce all of the candidates and then go back over their likelihood. So also at the likely level, we're going to meet Mohamed Sobi, and then no candidates at the possible level. And then we have 3 candidates at the possible but unlikely level. For players at this level or below, we're not going to get much into the introduction. We'll just name them, and then if they are selected for the final squad, we'll give more information in part 2. But here we have Mohamed Awad, and Mohamed Awad actually was on the bench for 9 of the games during the period, but he was not selected for the last 4 matches. So we think he's possible but unlikely. Next, we have Al Mahdi Soliman. He was not selected for the last 6 matches. He was on the bench for 5 games over the period, though, so there is a possibility. And finally, we have Abdelaziz El Balouti. Last appeared, or his first and only appearance was on the bench in a game in October 2025. So all of those have, a slight chance of making it. At the seemingly off the squad level, we have the keeper who replaced El Shanawi in the African Cup there, Mohamed Abu Gabal. And yes, he did actually continue after the African Cup. His last game, though, was in March of 2024. So he seems to be out of the picture. Also out of the picture, we have Ahmed Nasser El Shanawi. So 2 goalkeepers named El Shanawi. This is Ahmed Nasser, and he last appeared in the African Cup in January of 2024. He was the other backup keeper. I think they brought 4 actually, but he was one of them, but has not been called up since. So we have a bunch of players off the squad there. Let's get back to introducing the more likely players. So we did Ufa Shobair there. Let's look at Mohamed El Shanawi. So He's been with Egypt since 2018. He has 68 caps and is 37 years old. So getting up there in age again may be one of the reasons we bumped him down a notch too likely. El Shanawi, like Chaubert, plays for Al Ahly in Egypt. He's been with them uh, well, this is his second time with them since 2016. And he was a starter, El Shanawi, in the 2018 World Cup and has been their starter ever since through the three African Cups since then. So very firm in the position over the period. He started 12 of their 16 games. He was injured for the first two in March, and it was Mohamed Abu Gabal who came in for those two games. And then we saw he was not selected for two matches, including the last match. It's a bit of a concern for us there as to whether they're rethinking the starting keeper. The other likely candidate is Mohamed Sobi. He's been with Egypt since 2022, and he has 5 caps. And is 26 years old. He plays for Zamalek in Egypt there, and has been part of the last 2 African Cups, so a backup keeper in the 2021 and 2023 African Cups. Over the recent period, he was off the team or not selected, not called up, I should say, after the African Cup in January of 2024, was absent for 8 months, but he returned in September 2025. And as we saw, started one of their remaining 4 games and was on the bench for 3 others. So we think he's coming back into the picture. Yes, he's back in the picture as a likely candidate. But we do have a few possible but unlikely candidates who might challenge his position there. Okay, that is it for goalkeepers, and we move on to defence, and we begin with central defenders. So as we saw in section 1, this is usually a 2-man position in 3/4 or 75% of the games, but sometimes they do field a 3-man central defence here. So let's begin with a summary of the situation. Sorry, I should have moved my graphics there on the YouTube. A summary of the situation. So in the African Cup in no, actually, I'm going to begin just by introducing the candidates. So let's introduce them by name first. We have Rami Rabia as a definite candidate, and Mohamed Abdel Monem as a likely candidate. We're going to talk about an injury concern with him. And then a couple of other likely candidates, Khaled Sobi and Hossam Abdel Maguid. All 3 of those likely. We have at the possible level Yasser Ibrahim, Amr Al-Ghazar, and Mohamed Rabia, so 3 possible candidates. And then seemingly off the squad, who I'll dispense with here, is Ali Gabber, a bit of a veteran for the team since 2014. He has 40 caps. He was on the African Cup 2017 squad and the World Cup 2018 squad. He missed the 2 African Cups after that, but came back for the last African Cup in January of 2024, but has not appeared since then. So Ali Gabber seemingly off the squad. And then Ahmed Hegazi, another big name. 88 caps for Egypt since 2011 and has been part of all squads since the 2017 African Cup. So that includes the World Cup there in 2018, where he was a starter. And he last appeared also. He continued after the Cup, but only until September of 2024. So Ahmed Hegazi seemingly off the squad now. So 2 veterans there lost. Now, let's go back and look at the situation before we give a bit more detail on those players. In the African Cup in January 2024, the pairing was Mohamed Abdel Monem and Ahmed Hegazi. And that was for all four of the games. Hegazi did drift off the team after that, and Rami Rabia replaced him and played almost all of the games over the current period. So it was Mohamed Abdel Monem and Rami Rabia, and Abdel Monem remained alongside Rabia until June of 2024, but he only started 2 of the 6 African Cup qualifiers in the fall of 2022. Sorry, fall of 2024. Various players replaced Abdel Monem, and when Rabia was injured for the November games there, things became quite mixed up. Khaled Sobi was the player who got most of the starts there, and in March of 2025, Abdel Monem and Rami Rabia were reunited. However, in the fall, Abdel Monem was injured, so Khaled Sobi stepped in again for the first 2 games. However, it was a different player for each of the last 2 games. And I should say that one of those was central midfielder Hamdi Fathi, who appeared in central defence a few times over the period, especially when it was a 3-man backline. He would come back and play in central defence. But we are going to meet Hamdi Fathi in the midfield there, so a little bit later. Okay, so that's the situation, and let's look at the candidates here in more detail. So we have Rami Rabia. He has never played in a tournament. That's why his name is in grey. Oh, it shouldn't be. Yes, it should be. He's been around a long time. That's why I'm getting confused. He's been on the team since 2012 and has 38 caps and 5 goals for Egypt. He's 32 years old, currently playing in the UAE for Al Ain, but was with Al Ali in Egypt for a long time, from 2015 to 25 there. Actually, that was his second stint with them. However, he has not been selected for a tournament. He's been around for so long. Over the recent period, he came back. He was kind of in and out of the team, really, just popping up for one game here and there over the recent period, the last, say, 4 years or so. And then he came back in a big way. And started 14 of their 16 games over this recent period. That was after the African Cup. And he was injured for one and not selected for one. So really now really making his mark on the team. Rami Rabia, the definite candidate. The first of the 3 likely candidates is Mohamed Abdel Monem. So he's been with Egypt since 2021, so fairly new there. He's 26 years old, but he's already got 33 caps and 3 goals. And he's currently playing for Nice in France. So one of the players playing outside of Egypt there. But he also played for Al Ali in Egypt for quite a while, for 6 years, 2018 to 2024. Abdel Monem then was his first tournament was the African Cup in 2021, and he also played in 2023. He was a starter in the recent cup and started 8 of their 16 games over this period. He was injured, though, for the last 4 of the games and not selected for 4 others. Nevertheless, we have him as a likely candidate, Mohamed Abdel Monem. The other candidates are more backup players. We did hear Khaled Sobi's name come up in the position review. Khaled Sobi has been with Egypt just since 2024, and he has 5 caps, but he is 30 years old. Sorry, I had to clear my throat there. He is 30 years old, so a bit of a late joiner to the team. He plays for Al Masry in Egypt since 2024, various other Egyptian clubs. So he got his first appearance for the national team in September of 2024, and as we saw, started four of the remaining 12 games. He subbed in for one and was on the bench for five. So really kind of a backup player when Abdelmonim or Rabia are not available. The same is true of the other likely candidate, Hossam Abdelmaguid. He's not a starter, but he is a bench player. Uh, Abdelmaguid has been with Egypt since 2023, but only four caps in that time. He's 24 years old and plays for Zamalek in Egypt since 2020. And he was on the preliminary squad for the last African Cup, but not selected. And he got his first cap actually just before that in September of 2023. Then he was off the team for a little over a year. And came back in November of 2024 and didn't start any games, but was subbed in for three and on the bench for all five others. So he is always called up recently, but doesn't get on the field very much. Let's look at the three players at the possible level, beginning with Yasser Ibrahim. Basically, he was brought in at the end to cover for Abdelmonim's injury. However, he did start the last game. Yasser Ibrahim has been with Egypt since 2022 with just 7 caps there. He's 32 years old and plays for Al Ahly in Egypt since 2019. And he was part of the squad for the 2023 African Cup. But didn't see any action. He was on the roster, but saw no action. Over the recent period, Yasser Ibrahim started the last one actually, of their games, and was on the bench for 3. He was out with 2 separate injuries over the period for 3 games there, and not called up for 9 of those 16 games. That is Yasser Ibrahim. The second possible candidate is Amr Al Ghazar. He has no caps for Egypt, even though he's 26 years old. He plays for National Bank there in Egypt, and he got his first appearance on the bench in September of 2025. Didn't start any games, but was on the bench for all 4 matches at the end of the period there. So a possible substitute or backup player. The third is Mohamed Rabia. He has been with Egypt since 2024 with 2 caps. He's 29 years old and he plays for ZFC in Egypt, a recent move after playing for Smuha. Mohamed Rabia got his first cap in November 2024. He started the first 2 of the games there and was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 4 matches, including the last 2 matches. So just at the possible level, Mohamed Rabia there. Okay, that's it for central defenders. And we're going to move on to the left back position. This is just one position, so central defenders is 2 or sometimes 3. So we just finished a pretty busy section. For left back, let us begin by looking at the candidates. So we have Mohamed Hamdi as a definite candidate, and we have Ahmed Abu Al-Futu as seemingly off the squad. Ahmed Abu Al-Futu and Mohamed Shokri also seemingly off the squad. So I will introduce Al-Futu because I think he might actually come back. But for the time being, I'll say that he last appeared in the last African Cup. Mohamed Shokri got 2 appearances in March of 2024 and then disappeared off the team again. So not a strong candidate, and we won't say more about him unless he is selected, and we'll cover that in part 2. So really just Mohamed Hamdi is the only viable candidate. Let's see what's going on with the position. It was Mohamed Hamdi starting the first 2 games of the African Cup in January of 2024, and Ahmed Abu Al-Futu starting the last of the games in the Cup. However, that proved the last game for Al-Futu. Going forward, Mohamed Hamdi started almost all of the games over the period, and when it was a three-man defence, or at least one of the times, he pushed up to a left wing position there. Interestingly, though, for two games he was absent in March of 2025, and it was Mohamed Trezeguet replacing him. Mohamed Trezeguet is more of an attacker, a left attacking midfielder. We'll meet him when we cover that position, but a bit odd to see him back in defence there. However, he seems the only candidate over the period as backup for this position. They seem to need at least one more on the roster, so we're thinking in part two that we're either going to see a new name or else the return of Al Futu. Al Futu's only 28 years old, and that's why we're going to introduce him here, because we do suspect he might come back into the squad. Anyway, let's look at the only viable candidate, Mohamed Hamdi. He's been with Egypt since 2021 with 30 caps and 1 goal, and he's 30 years old, and he's been playing for Pyramids in Egypt since 2018. He was selected actually for the African Cup in 2021, Mohamed Hamdi, but he was injured before the tournament and replaced. But he was selected again for the 2023 African Cup, and as we saw, started 2 games and then lost his position. So he did score one of their goals in World Cup 2026 qualifying. That's his only goal for the national team. Over the period, though, Hamdi started 13 of their 16 games there. So it looks like the definite candidate. But again, they will need backup for the position, and I don't imagine Trezeguet is really the backup, even though he proved to be over the period. A more likely backup is our seemingly off the squad Ahmed Abu Al Futu, so we will introduce him. He's been with Egypt since 2019 with 28 caps and 1 goal, and he's only 28 years old, so I think he will come back, or might come back into the fray. Al Futu plays for Zamalek in Egypt since 2016 and was selected. He was the starter in the African Cup in 2021. And as we saw, he came in for the last 2 games in the 2023 African Cup in January of 2024. So not sure why he's off the squad, because he seems the only designated left back that is there. Anyway, that's it. That's the left back. Let's go over to the other side of the field. We have a similar named player. It's not Mohamed Hamdi. On the right side, it's Mohamed Hani. So that's something to distinguish in your minds. Mohamed Hani is a definite candidate here. And we have a likely candidate here too. That's Ahmed Eid. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's spelled E-I-D. So Eid, I'll pronounce it as Eid. We also have a seemingly off the squad, Omar Kamal. No, not seemingly off the squad, but possible but unlikely. So I'll deal with these players as we go here. Omar Kamal was not selected for the last 6 matches. He was part of the last 2 African Cups, but not selected for the last 6 matches. And then we have Ahmed Ramadan, also not selected for the last 6 matches. So both of those possible but unlikely, but we'll talk about them more if they end up being selected. And then one player seemingly off the squad, it's Akram Tawfiq. And he last appeared for the national team on the bench in June of 2024. So he was actually part of the 2021 African Cup squad and has been around since then, but not since June of 2024. So let's go back and look at the situation, a summary of the position for right backs. Mohamed Hani started 3 games in the Cup, and Omar Kamal started 1 of those 4 games. So Omar Kamal starting game 2 of the 2024 African Cup. Mohamed Hani, after the Cup, had a firm grip on the position over the period, but he was injured in the fall of 2024 for 4 games. And it was newcomer Ahmed Eid that replaced him for the first 3 of those. Omar Kamal, who had been selected for the Cup, as we saw, had been drifting off the team, but actually made a return to start the last of the games where Hani was injured. In March of 2025, Mohamed Hani came back and started all games after that. So, yes, Omar Kamal with a chance of coming back into the fray there. Let's look at the players in more detail. Mohamed Hani, been with Egypt since 2016 with 30 caps. He's 29 years old and has played for Al Ahly in Egypt for the last 10 years. His first tournament, though, was the 2023 African Cup, and as we saw, was a starter there. And then over the period started 12 of their 16 games, and as we saw, was injured for 4 of them. So Mohamed Hani, a definite candidate. Likely candidate, Ahmed Eid, basically taking over the backup position from Omar Kamal. He's new to the squad, Ahmed Eid, with 5 caps since 2024, and he's just 21 years old, plays for Al Masry in Egypt, with Zamalek before that. So Ahmed Eid got his first appearance on the bench in September of 2024, and as we saw, started 4 of the games, and he subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 6 others. So he's been called up consistently since September of 2024, taking over the position from Omar Kamal. Okay, that's the right side of the defense, and we are done with defenders, and so we move up to the midfield here. We're going to begin with defensive midfielders. So just a bit about the position in general. We saw they do use a 4-2-3-1 in half of the games during this period, and a 4-3-3 in 25% of the games. But really, there's not a clear distinction between defensive midfielders and central midfielders here. But we can nevertheless deal with defensive and central midfielders separately. So let's look at defensive midfielders. We'll begin by just naming the candidates. We have at the definite level Ahmed Nabil Kuka, and at the likely level, Marwan Atia, and also at the likely level, Hamdi Fati. Actually, he's a central midfielder, coded as a central midfielder, but we're moving him up here just because it fits the discussion better. And then we have at the seemingly off the squad level, Mohamed El Neni. Okay, let's go to the summary of the position over the period then. In the African Cup in January of 2024, it was Hamdi Fati and Mohamed El Neni playing as defensive midfielder, only in the 4-2-3-1 formation, but they also played in the 4-3-3 formation as central midfielders, and then they were accompanied by Marwan Atia in 2 of the 4 games. Over the period, Mohamed El Neni drifted off the team, but Hamdi Fati and Marwan Atia were regulars. Ahmed Koka got a few starts when they were out, especially towards the end of the period. Okay, that is the situation. Let's take a closer look at the candidates then. We have Ahmed Nabil Koka as a definite candidate because he's always selected. He did start 4 of their 16 games. He was also subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 6 others. So always selected. So we think he's a definite candidate to make the squad, even though he's not one of the main starters here. Ahmed Kokat has been with Egypt since 2024 and has 10 caps. He's 24 years old and has spent his whole career with Al Ahly, with the senior team since 2021 and the youth team for 13 years. Ahmed Kuka was actually selected for the squad in 2023, but he got injured, knee problems, and so was replaced in that tournament, but as we said, always called up during the period. Marwan Atia is the first of our likely candidates. He is 27 years old and has been with Egypt since 2023 and has 23 caps and no goals. And he also plays for Al Ahly in Egypt since 2023. And he was selected for the African Cup squad there, subbed into game 2, and then got a starting position for the last 2 games, Marwan Atia. And over the period, he has started 13 of their 16 games, just 3 matches that he was not selected for, but that does include the last match. So that's why we moved him down to a likely candidate here. The other likely candidate is Hamdi Fati, and we're going to talk about an injury concern with him at the end here. But Fati has been with Egypt since 2019 with 53 caps and 4 goals, and he's 31 years old. And he's playing in Qatar right now for Al Wakra since 2023. But he has been loaned back actually to Al Ahly a couple of times, even while playing with them, and Al Ahly was his club before he moved to Qatar. Fati's first tournament was the 2021 African Cup. He started 4 of their games there, and also was a starter in the most recent cup there in January of 2024. Over the period, Hamdi Fati started 9 of their 16 games, and he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1. But not selected for 3 matches, and that includes the last match, and in fact 2 of the last 3 matches. So that also created a bit of doubt in us and made us move him from definite down to likely there. A couple of other things: we did see him playing as a central defender a few times in this period, and he is out with a muscle injury from mid-November, so a recent injury there. He still has a tag on him, an injured tag on my main source here. However, it did say he was on the bench for their November 14th international game. So, the tag says his return date is unknown, but he did seem to return at least to the bench in their most recent international. So we'll have to update that in part 2. But Hamdi Fati, a likely, just at the likely level here because of not being selected towards the end. And then at the seemingly off the squad, we'll talk a little bit about veteran Mohamed El Neni. He was with Egypt in 2011 with 103 caps for them, and part of many tournaments part of every tournament since the 2017 African Cup. However, after being a starter in the last African Cup in January of 2024, he kind of drifted off the team and last appeared in September of 2024. But at the end of section 2 here, I'll have a bit more to say about Mohamed El Neni. However, he does seem to be off the squad here. So another kind of veteran on the or seemingly off the squad there. Okay, that's the defensive midfield. Let's move on to central midfielders, and we kind of we'll introduce the candidates and then go back to our summary. So we've moved a couple of players here. Ahmed Syed, or Zizo, I'm going to call him, is actually coded as a central midfielder, but we've moved him to the attacking end of the field because that's where he's mostly been playing. He did play a few games as central midfielder, but mostly as an attacker. And as we saw, we moved Hamdi Fati to a defensive midfielder. We've talked about him already then. So at the likely level here, we have Mahmoud Saber. And then at the possible level, a couple of candidates, Mohamed Lashin and Mohamed Shehata. And then seemingly off the squad, Nabil Imad. No, sorry, possible but unlikely. Nabil Imad. And seemingly off the squad, Imam Ashur and Mahmoud Hamada. Okay, we will come back and just briefly tell you when they last played. Let's look though at the summary of the position. So we already have basically Marwan Atia and Hamdi Fati. So really what we're looking at here is at the players who accompany them. They were fairly regular in the midfield, and we're going to simplify things a bit here by saying various players joined Fati and Atia when it was a 4-3-3 formation. Zizou sometimes did, but he played more as an attacker during this period. Imam Ashur was actually the player in the cup and in the early part of the period, but he drifted off the team over this period. We also have Mahmoud Trezeguet. He popped up as a left back briefly. He also pops up in the central midfield here. He got a couple of starts in the central midfield. And towards the end, it became almost experimental with several players getting single starts. So we don't have a kind of a candidate to latch on to accompanying Fati and Atia. Rather, it's been various players. So Zizou, one of them, Trezeguet, one of them. But on our list here, we have Mahmoud Saber as a likely candidate, and he has been with Egypt since 2024 with 7 caps and no goals. He's 24 years old, Mahmoud Saber, and he plays for Pyramids in Egypt since 2020. He's currently on loan, actually, to another club. Mahmoud Saber got his first cap in October of 2024. He started 2 of the games there in the central midfield. He was also subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 3 others. So he's been consistently called up. That's why we have him as a likely candidate, but only 2 starts. So not much of a starter there. The first of 2 possible candidates, Mohamed Lashin, has been with Egypt since 2021 and has 15 caps and no goals. He's 29 years old, and he's in his second stint with Pyramids in Egypt since 2023. And he was selected for the last 2 cups, the 2021 and 2023 African Cups there. But really, he's kind of been in and out of the team, and in fact wasn't called up after the African Cup, but did return. Sorry about that, did return after a 20-month absence in September of 2025 to start 1 of their remaining 4 games, and then he was subbed in for the 3 others. So kind of coming back into the picture at the end there is Mohamed Lashin. The other possible candidate is Mohamed Shehata, and he's been with Egypt just since 2024, and he has 4 caps and no goals. He's 24 years old and plays for Zamalek in Egypt. And Mohamed Shehata got his first appearance on the bench in June of 2024. He only started 1 game there, but he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 3. However, Shehata was not selected for the last 4 matches, so almost possible but unlikely. We leave him at the possible level. Let's look at the less likely candidates briefly. We have Nabil Imad, and he returned after a 2.5-year absence in November of 2024. And was subbed in for 2 matches and on the bench for 4, and then not selected for the last 2 matches. But he's really in and out of the Egypt team, Nabil Imad. He only has 10 caps since his first in 2019. And by the way, he's sometimes called Nabil Dunga there. So he's possible but unlikely. And seemingly off the team, we saw Imam Ashur actually starting games in the African Cup in January of 2024 there. However, after June of 2024, he was not called up. So he actually was part of the squad for the last two African Cups, but seemingly off the squad now. Also seemingly off the squad, Mahmoud Hamada. He was also part of the squad for the last African Cup. It just appeared once as a substitute there, but that was his last call-up for the national team, Mahmoud Hamada. So we won't go into more detail on those players. Unless they're selected for the final squad, then we'll cover them in more detail in part 2. Okay, that's it for defensive and central midfielders. Even though they use a 4-3-3 formation, and we should have left players coded as left and right midfielders, we don't. So it's the defensive and central midfielders covering those positions when they use a 4-3-3 formation there. So that's it actually for the defensive end of the midfield. Now we move up to the attacking end of the midfield, and we begin with left attackers. So actually we have a category for versatile attackers, and a lot of our players could fit into it. So what we're going to find over this our coverage of the attacking midfielders is players moving from side to side or from forward to attacking midfielder. The names will come up, the same names will come up quite a bit. But we have kind of categorized players. Another thing I should say is that the left attacking midfielder position could cover a winger in a 4-2-3-1 formation. Sorry, it could cover a winger in a something like a 4-4-2 formation. It could cover a attacking midfielder in a 4-2-3-1, or a left and right forward in a 4-3-3 formation. So we have this category of left attacking midfielder to cover all of those. Let's introduce the candidates. So we've already seen Mahmoud Trezeguet. I'm just going to call him Trezeguet. We've seen him in as a left back and as a central midfielder, but really he's a left attacker, and he's a definite candidate here. However, he does have an injury tag on him. So does Omar Mamouche, who we have at the likely level here. And also at the likely level, we have Ibrahim Adel. And then possible but unlikely, and also with an injury tag, is Zalaka. So we'll come back and look at those in a bit more detail after we summarize the position, but those are the actors in this drama. In the African Cup in January of 2024, the position was shared by Mahmoud Trezeguet and Omar Mamouche, each of them starting twice. After the Cup, Trezeguet had a firm grip on the position in the March and June 2024 games, but it was shared again in the fall of 2024. Trezeguet started 2 of the 6 games there, Marmouche 3 of them, and Ibrahim Adel came in to start one of those 6 games. It remained a shared position, although I should say Trezeguet and Marmouche were almost always on the field in other positions, if not this one. Marmouche was injured for the last 2 games, so Ibrahim Adel started twice while Trezeguet played elsewhere on the field. So those 3 players really covering the position. Okay, let's look at them in more detail then. At the definite level, Mahmoud Trezeguet. And he is 31 years old, and he's been with Egypt since 2014 with 86 caps and 22 goals. He's in his second stint with Al Ahly since 2025, but played outside of the country in Turkey and in England with Aston Villa, and a couple of other teams, Belgium and also in Qatar with Al Rayyan there. But he is a product of Al Ahly fundamentally. He spent 10 10 years of his youth with their youth club. Trezeguet got his first tournament in the 2017 African Cup. He was a starter in all tournaments there, including the World Cup in 2018, all the way up until the most recent Cup. And in qualifying for this Cup, he scored 4 of their 12 goals. And in World Cup qualifying, 5 of their 23 goals. So scoring quite a bit is Trezeguet. And over the period started 14 of their 16 games. Again, not just in this position, but in a few different positions. And he was subbed in for 1. So just 1 match that he was not selected for. So Trezeguet, a definite candidate here. Omar Marmoush, but I should talk about his injury. He is tagged with a hamstring injury. He did play the last game before a break for his club on November 2nd, but then turned up injured for the international game on November 14th. So that's a new injury. We don't know much about it. It's an unknown return date, and we'll have to wait until part 2 maybe to get more information on that. We'll let you know at the beginning of September, beginning of December. Okay, on to the first of our likely candidates, Omar Marmoush, and he has been with Egypt since 2021 with 39 caps and 7 goals. He's 26 years old and moved recently to Manchester City in England since 2025. He had been with clubs in Germany before that, not really big clubs either, Eintracht Frankfurt and Wolfsburg. So I was a bit surprised, to be honest, that he got such a big move up. I want to say, because I'm Canadian, that he was raised in Canada in his younger years, and he does hold Canadian citizenship. But unfortunately, he plays for Egypt rather than Canada. Marmoush was... his first tournament was the African Cup in 2021. He was a starter there. In 2023, and again, this is why I was a bit surprised he was selected for Manchester City. He wasn't a starter in that tournament. Rather, he played he started 2 of the 4 games there, and he scored 1 goal in each of the 2 recent qualifying campaigns for this Cup and for the World Cup in 2026. Over the period, he started 10 of their 16 games, Marmoush, and he was injured for the last 2 games and not selected for 3 matches. That's why we have him as likely rather than definite. Yes, he was injured for the October 2025 games right at the end there. However, he did play for his team since then, so he seems to have recovered from that injury. Okay, Omar Marmoush, and the other likely candidate is Ibrahim Adel, and he's been with Egypt since 2021. He has 17 caps and 3 goals, and he's 24 years old, and he was part of the squad for the 2021 African Cup there. Well, I would say he was a bench player, but he wasn't even on the bench for any of the 7 games in that tournament, but he was named to the squad. In 2023, he was recovering from a broken ankle, so wasn't available for selection. In the last qualifying campaigns, he scored 2 of their 12 goals for this qualification and 1 of their 23 goals in World Cup 2026 qualifying, Ibrahim Adel. So he started 3 matches, and significantly that includes the last 2 of their games over this period, and he was subbed in for 8 and on the bench for 1. So he was mostly called up, although he does seem to be more of a backup player in this position, Ibrahim Adel. And we'll take a quick look at the possible but unlikely candidate, Zalaka. He was subbed in for 1 game. He got his first appearance on the bench in November of 2024. He didn't start any games, but was subbed in for 1. But was out for the last 6 matches. But that was due to injury, so we're not sure if he would have been selected otherwise. So injury, part of his story here. We have him at the possible but unlikely level, but it looks like it depends how he recovers from his injury. So that's the left attacking midfield position. Over to the right side, and we will begin by listing the candidates. So at the definite level, we have Mohamed Salah. And also at the definite level, we've moved Zizou, who's coded as a central midfielder. We may change his coding if he continues to play as an attacking midfielder. But Zizou or Ahmed Sayed, also at the definite level. At the likely level, we have Mustafa Fathi. And then at the possible but unlikely level, we have Tahir Mohammed. Let's look at the position over the period. Then in the Cup, Mohamed Salah started the first two games, but then was injured for the last two. So really, this position is effectively his by default. But in addition to those two games in the Cup, he was also not on the squad for 6 of the 16 games over the period. So absent quite a bit. It was Zizou replacing him for the first 2 games of the Cup, and Omar Mamouche, the left attacking midfielder, coming in for the 2 March 2024 games. But that's because Zizou was injured for those, or we presume that's why Zizou is not available, or Salah. Salah came back into the position and, did play it quite a bit over the period, but he was also out for the last 3 of the fall 2024 African Cup qualifiers. And Zizou did replace him in the first of these games, but then again, Zizou got injured, and this time it was Tahir Mohammed coming in from the cold to start 2 games and then promptly disappearing again. So that was in the fall of 2024. In 2025, Salah returned and played all games except the very last game in October, the World Cup qualifier, and Zizou once again proved the replacement. So it looks like Mohamed Salah position and Zizou playing backup. And Zizou, if he's not playing backup here, quite possibly appearing on the field somewhere else. Let's look at the players in more detail. Mohamed Salah is the captain of the team, and he's been with Egypt since 2011. 108 caps and 63 goals there, most impressive. Salah is 33 years old and plays for Liverpool in England since 2017, and played for top clubs before that, Roma and Chelsea, and so on. His first tournament, like many we've seen so far, was the 2017 African Cup. And he's been a starter in most tournaments. In the World Cup, if you recall, he was struggling with injury. He didn't appear in the first game, but actually did start the next 2 games, but was struggling with injury. Of course, he's been a starter in all cups since then. He scored 2 of their 12 goals for qualifying for this cup, 9 of their 23 goals for World Cup 2026 qualifications. And over the recent period, Mohamed Salah has started 10 of their 16 games, and not selected for 6 others, including the last match. But that creates no doubt in our minds, because we're certain that he's not in any doubt. The other definite candidate is Ahmed Sayed, or Zizou. He does have an injury concern on him here. He has been with Egypt since 2019 with 52 caps and 4 goals, and is 29 years old. And he's back with playing for Al Ahly in Egypt since 2025. And Zamalek for 6 years before that. But he has played out of country in Belgium and Portugal. Zizou's first tournament was the 2021 African Cup, where he was just a substitute. But in the recent African Cup, January 2024, started 3 of the 4 games in that cup. Over the recent period, Zizou has started 11 of their 16 games and subbed in for 1 but out with two separate injuries for 3 games there. And I don't have him as scoring any goals actually in either of the recent campaigns, so that's a bit of a surprise. He only has 4 goals over his 52 caps, so seems to be more of a creator. Remember, he is actually coded as a central midfielder, so the attacking midfield is fairly recent. Anyway, Zizou is out with a cruciate knee injury. That seems to have happened sometime after their very recent international game on November 14th. But on the main source that I use, he has an injury tag, and that's all we know about it. So there's very little information on it, but he has the injury tag. And again, that's something we'll have to update in part 2. Okay, so those are the 2 definite candidates. As a likely candidate, we also have Mustafa Fathi. He's only a substitute. He hasn't started any games, but is regularly called up. Mustafa Fathi has been with Egypt since 2015 with 37 caps and 3 goals. He's 31 years old and plays for Pyramids in Egypt. He has played out of country a bit in Saudi Arabia. And despite being with the team since 2015, his first call up to a tournament was the most recent African Cup in 2024 in January, where he was subbed into some games, subbed into 3 of the games there. Over the recent period, he, as I said, hasn't started any games, but was subbed into 10 of them and on the bench for 4. So just 2 matches that he was not selected for. So he is likely to be called up to the squad, but is certainly not a starter for Egypt. He, by the way, did score 1 of their 12 goals in qualifying for this tournament. And finally, at the possible but unlikely level, we have Tahir Mohamed. We saw that he basically came in to cover injuries for 2 games in October 2025. In November 2024, I should say, but has not been selected for the last 6 matches. So kind of on the outskirts here is Tahir Mohamed. Okay, that is the right attack. Let's go to the central attacking position. And this is kind of interesting because they did use this position in half of the games, a 4-2-3-1 formation. However, it has been stationed by out-of-position players. So we'll introduce the players coded as central attackers, but really it's not them playing when they use the position. We have at the possible but unlikely level Nasser Maher, and then at the seemingly off-the-squad level, Mohamed Magdi Kafsha. And we'll come back just to tell you briefly about them. Let's talk about the position first, though. In the Cup, they used this position in only 1 of the games, and it was central midfielder Imam Ashur playing it. He's now drifted off the team. Over the period, 2 other players who are now off the team had single starts in the position. In the fall of 2024, Zizou came in to play central attacking midfielder, and he got 1 further start in this position after that, and Trezeguet also got 2 starts in the position. So that's how it's being covered. Let's look at the candidates who are coded as central attacking midfielders. Nasser Maher started 1 of their games over this period, but was not selected for the last 6 matches. And Mohamed Magdi Kafsha last appeared for the team in March of 2024. Despite having 22 caps and 5 goals, he has never been called up to a tournament there. Okay, that is it for that attacking midfielders, and so now we move on to forwards. We don't have any players coded as secondary strikers, so we go straight to forwards. Let's introduce the candidates here, and we begin with Mohamed Mustafa. Sorry, I got that backwards. It's Mustafa Mohammed as a definite candidate, and also as a definite candidate, Osama Faisal. There, I'm just waiting for my computer to catch up here. Come on, computer, get moving. There we go. Osama Faisal. Um, At the seemingly off the squad level, Mahmoud Karaba. That's a fairly big name there, so we'll come back and talk about him a little bit. Also, we have Ahmed Hassan. His nickname is also Coca, just like the defensive midfielder. And we also have Ahmed Hassan Magoub. All of these players actually have played for Egypt quite a bit, those three. We have two more. One is Ufa, also known as Ahmed Amin. And then we have Mohammed Sharif. So we'll come back and take a quick look at those players. But for now, we just have the two definite candidates. Let's look at the position before we meet them in more detail. Mustafa Mohammed played the position in all 4 games of the last African Cup in January 2024, and he retained the starting position through the March and June 2024 games. He also started the first of the fall 2024 African Cup qualifiers. However, he was injured for the second of those games, and although he did return, he kind of lost his firm grip on the position after that. Left attacking midfielder Omar Mamouche started 1, and Osama Faisal started 2 of those fall 2026 games, fall 2024 African Cup qualifiers. Going forward into 2025, Mustafa Mohammed and Osama Faisal shared the position, with Omar Mamouche also getting one more start there. Well, we've met Omar Mamouche, so let's meet Mustafa Mohammed. He's been with Egypt since 2019 and has 51 caps and 13 goals. He's 28 years old and one of the relatively few players playing outside of Egypt. He plays for Nantes in France since 2023 and was with Galatasaray prior to that. After moving from Egypt in 2021, he played for Zamalek. Mohammed was a starter in the 2021 African Cup. That was his first tournament. And as we saw in the most recent African Cup, he's only scored 1 of their goals over the last 2 campaigns, just 1 goal in the World Cup 2026 qualifying campaign. Over the period, Mustafa Mohammed has started 9 of their 16 games and subbed in for 5, but he was out with 2 separate injuries for 2 matches over the period. So always selected anyway, even if he is losing his grip on the starting position. The other definite candidate is Osama Faisal, and he's actually not brand new to the team. He's been with Egypt since 2021 and has 12 caps and no goals, which as a forward isn't very good. Faisal is 24 years old and plays for National Bank of Egypt since 2021. He was on the preliminary squad for the last African Cup, but wasn't selected, and basically returned after a year-long absence in September of 2024, but then started 5 of the remaining 12 games and was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 4 others. So always selected here and will be for this, but we'll have to see how the starting position works out. Let's race through the 5 players seemingly off the squad, beginning with Mahmoud Karaba. So a veteran with the team since 2013 with 32 caps and 5 goals. And but last appeared in the African Cup. He was on the squad for the 2023 African Cup, but hasn't been called up since. Next, we have Ahmed Hassan. His nickname is Coca, and he also has been with the team since 2013 and also has 32 caps, just like Karaba there. And like Karabi, he's kind of been selected for some, but not all of the tournaments. He was selected for the last African Cup, but that too was his last appearance for the national team, or his last call-up. Next, we have Ahmed Hassan. I'm kind of wondering if I'm getting things right. Oh, no, I have the same name twice here. Okay, so that's Ahmed Hassan Mahhoub. And so actually, we just have 4 candidates. I just had the players listed under different names there. Let's get rid of one of them here. Okay, so that leaves us next with Ufa, or Ahmed Amin. Ufa actually just came in, made 2 appearances. As a starter and as a substitute in June 2024, and then promptly disappeared from the squad. And finally, we have Mohamed Sharif. He has 22 caps and 5 goals for Egypt since 2020, but last appeared in June of 2024. So all 4 of those players seemingly off the squad. And that brings us to the end of section 2, or almost to the end, because in section 1, I promised I would talk about this strange situation of, 2 September friendlies that were played at the same time as their World Cup qualifying games. And then in November, on November 17th here, we have Egypt playing 2 games. One against Algeria and one against Cape Verde on the same day. How do they do that? Well, I said they didn't play friendlies like most teams in June of 2024. They seem to almost move those to 2 friendlies in September of 2025. And I was baffled by this at first, because I see some of the same players playing in the game. So just let me explain. They played the World Cup qualifiers on September 6th and September 10th, but they played these friendlies on September 5th and September 9th, so a day before. And what baffled me is that some of the same players were playing the games, just in defense there, but we have goalkeeper Mohamed El Shanawi playing all 4 of those games. We didn't kind of use that information in our report, because only one of the many websites I use actually reports these games, which is odd in itself, but seems they would definitely play, because they have lineups for them and everything. And as I said, some of the starters are playing in those games. So we have the left and right back, Mohamed Handi and Mohamed Hani showing up in the games, even though they also started in the World Cup qualifiers. So quite baffling here. However, I will say that most of the players are kind of a B team. So we get players who seemingly off the squad, like Mohamed El Neni, for example, or Akram Tawfiq. We've reported them as being off the squad, but they did show up for these games. So we think the November 17 games will be something similar, basically a B team. It's hard to imagine, though, like the goalkeeper playing 4 games over 4 days. What is it, over 5 days? But that's actually what it says. So weird, that's all I can say. Okay, it's time for us to move on to section 3 here. And so this is mostly a review and a summary of section 2. For those listening to the short version here, you can check out the long version for the reasons for our prediction here and for some career information on the main players. But we're not concerning ourselves with predictions, predicted starters at this point. We're going to save that for part 2. And let's just review the candidates and their likelihood of making the final squad here. So we have manager Rui Vitória out after the African Cup in January of 2024, and Hossam Hassan coming in and leading them through qualification for this Cup and for 2026 World Cup qualifying. Goalkeepers, we have a definite candidate in Ufa Shobair and likely candidates in Mohamed El Shanawi and Mohamed Sobi. And we won't mention candidates below the possible but unlikely level, but we will talk about them in part 2 if they are named to the final squad. That's goalkeepers. On to central defence. We have a definite candidate in Rami Rabia, and then likely candidates in Mohamed Abdelmonem, Khaled Sobi, and Hossam Abdelmaguid. We also have 3 possible candidates in Yasser Ibrahim, Amr Al-Ghazar, and Mohamed Rabia. Have a couple of veterans off the squad there, which we'll talk about in the next part. Left backs, just one candidate over here, definite candidate Mohamed Hamdi. We think they may need more backup there. We talked about that a little bit. Right backs, we have a player with a similar name, Mohamed Hani, and a likely candidate, he's a definite candidate, a likely candidate in Ahmed Eid there. And moving up to the midfield, defensive midfielders, a definite candidate in Ahmed Nabil Koka, and 2 likely candidates, actually the main players here, Marwin Atia and Hamid Fati there. No candidates at the possible level. So we move to central midfielders. We have likely candidate, no definite candidate here, likely candidate Mahmoud Saber, and then possible candidates Mohamed Lashin and Mohamed Shahata. In the attacking end of the midfield, we have left attacking midfielder Mahmoud Trezeguet as a definite candidate, and 2 likely candidates, Omar Marmoush and Ibrahim Adel. On the right side of the attacking midfield, we have a definite candidate in Mohamed Salah and in Zizou. Actually, he's coded as a central midfielder, but he's been playing in the attacking end over this period. Zizou, also known as Ahmed Sayed. We also have a likely candidate in Mustafa Fati here. Central attackers, even though they do use the position, we have no candidates at the definite, likely, or possible level. It's out of position players like Trezeguet and Zizou covering that position when they use it. For forwards, we have 2 definite candidates in Mustafa Mohamed and in Osama Faisal. That's all we have there. No candidates at the likely or possible level, but we have 4 candidates who have kind of drifted off the squad. That's it. That's the list. And let's look at some big names who are off the squad. The biggest names in central defense, Ahmed Hegazi and Ali Gabber. And again, we talked about those in more detail in section 2, but those are familiar names that you won't be seeing in this cup probably. Let's do our review of injuries. So we have quite a few, but recovered from injury seems to be Omar Marmoush. So he missed the October internationals, but has been playing for his club since. And then the possible but unlikely candidate Zalaka was struggling with injury but is recovered. More concerning is 4 players at the unknown, and they're important players. We have Mohamed Abdelmonem, and we don't know what the situation is. We'll have to update it in part 2, but suffice to say they've been struggling with injury and we don't know a return date for them. So Mohamed Abdelmonem, the central defender, the central midfielder Hamdi Fati, and then the left attacking midfielder Mahmoud Trezeguet, and the right attacking midfielder Zizou. Those are 4 big names, and they would be sad to lose those from the cup, but we'll have to update those in part 2. We usually add some closing thoughts. I'm going to skip that and just go straight to our preview of part 2. So in mid-December, we're going to release part 2. That's when the final selections are known, so we'll tell you who's been selected both for the final squad and who was selected for the preliminary squad. And we'll focus on notable non-selections, any surprise inclusions, and then we'll add new players. Also at that time, we'll be able to update injuries, and kind of a feature of part 2 is our prediction of the starters. All right, that brings us to the end of our look at Egypt for part 1. We hope you join us for part 2 in early to mid-December. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.